Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea LaMoreaux with New Hampshire Lakes, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to our first evening session of our new webinar series, Explore Lakes with New Hampshire Lakes. And we've got a great attendance for this evening and a lot of friendly faces from all the webinars we did over the spring and summer. So welcome back. It's been a while since we've seen you. It's nice to see you. And welcome to all the new people who are tuning in, all the new friendly faces that are tuning in this evening. So again, this is the first session. It's going to be about an hour. And just a few housekeeping things. This session is currently being recorded, so we will post it so you and your friends and your family and your Lake Association members can watch it afterwards, share it with folks who weren't able to tune in. Participants, you are going to be muted for the duration of the webinar. You're most welcome to leave your camera on. Just remember, if you do, others can see you, see your smiling face. Feel free to please submit questions in the chat box at the bottom of the screen for everyone to see. And I'll show you just in the next slide what the chat box looks like for those of you who are new to this. We will answer your questions at the end of the presentation, so feel free to type them in as we go along. Actually, Jessica, one of our resident experts, will help to try to answer your questions along the way. And again, after this session, we will post the presentation and the slides on our website. You'll receive an email from me tomorrow morning with those links. And actually this evening, you'll receive an email from me asking you to tell us how we did. Let us know what you liked, how we could have done better, and things you want to learn about in the future. So how to chat, for those of you who are new to Zoom, everyone's configuration looks a little different sometimes, but over here on the left-hand side, down at this little red arrow is pointing to this little bubble that has some dots on it, and it says chat. You can usually click on that, which will open up a screen on that looks like this here on the right. And the important thing here is feel free to address your question to everyone. Try not to direct it to me or Krystal presenters because we may not be able to see it as we're talking, but Jessica will see it. So your host this evening, again, I'm Andrea LaMoreaux, Vice President, New Hampshire Lakes. Co-presenting with me is my colleague, Costa Balanoff, Conservation Program Coordinator. And Jessica Sayers, our Conservation Program Assistant, is going to help moderate. And Jessica and Krystal have their cameras turned on and give a wave, guys, if people can see you. It's our awesome conservation program team. So our story, New Hampshire Lakes, for those of you who this is your first time meeting us, we are a member-supported nonprofit organization. We work for all of the lakes in New Hampshire, all 1,000 of them, because of members. Thank you, those of you who are a member in the audience tonight. Because of our members, their support, we are able to bring events like this to our members and to the general public. If you're not a member, please consider becoming a member. Easy to find us on the web, nhlakes.org, and you can find out how to become a member and find out a whole bunch of other information too. Our mission, really simply put, is to keep New Hampshire's lakes, all 1,000 of them, clean and healthy now so we can enjoy them now and in the future, so our kids and our grandkids can enjoy them in the future. And we do this in a number of ways, but really we work with partners. We promote clean water policies and responsible use. We hope to inspire and give the general public the tools and the knowledge and the inspiration they need to help care for our lakes. Our programs, we run some core statewide programs. We are very active on the advocacy front in the state legislature, helping to craft and refine rules and laws and policies that help on the statewide level to help keep our lakes clean and healthy. We offer conservation programs. You may know us through our very popular Lake Host program, boat inspection program. We had a record-breaking year this year, over 100,000 courtesy boat inspections throughout the state, helping boaters do their part to prevent the spread of invasive species. And we also are running the Lake Smart program, which Krystal will tell you a little bit about later. In a normal year, we'd be spending a lot of time out in communities throughout the state, meeting with families and kiddos and talking about lake ecology and really getting everyone involved in that. We weren't able to meet people out in the communities this summer, but you know, it took us a pandemic to think outside the box and find out that webinars are really another great way for us to do outreach. And again, this is like our 20th webinar, and we'll be continuing to do webinars into the future. So again, this is our Explore Lakes with New Hampshire Lakes webinar, Lakes in Autumn. And we have, it'll be monthly, and you'll receive information as we go along throughout the next several months about our different offerings. And we'll just get right to it. So Krystal and I are going to kick it off tonight I'm going to talk about lake ecology, and then Krystal's going to follow up with some tips on how you guys can help keep your favorite lake clean and healthy this time of year. And again, feel free to type those questions into the chat box. Jessica's going to do her best to help you, and we will do our best to get you out of here by 8 o'clock tonight. So here we go. Lakes in autumn. It's a beautiful, beautiful scene. Our lakes change as the seasons change. Right now, obviously, our lakes are looking a little different, feeling a little different than they were just a couple weeks ago, a month or two ago in summer. Some of you who tuned into our lake ecology presentation over the summer have seen some of these slides before, so this will be a little bit of a review. But generally, how the water moves in a lake changes as the seasons change. And during summer, we're just coming off a pretty warm, dry summer. A lot of our lakes, most of our lakes, those lakes that are 30 feet or more in depth really, during the summer in New Hampshire, they stratify, or they sort of develop different layers. Our deeper lakes divide into 3 layers generally based on temperature. With the sun warming the surface of our lakes is generally warm, less dense than the cooler water that lies below it. And this, how our lakes become layered, really affects how oxygen and nutrients get mixed throughout the lake. So usually, again, in our lakes that are deeper, you know, as the summer goes on, the lake gets you know, really warm at the top, stays pretty cool in the bottom, and we have this rapid layer of changing temperature from top to bottom, and we have a lot of oxygen near the top of the lake, but not a lot of oxygen down at the bottom of the lake. So because of those different layers based on temperature, it's really hard for the lake to mix during the summer. So, you know, our lakes are coming off of a pretty long, warm summer, where in our deeper lakes, the oxygen was getting used up towards the end of the summer, and the nutrients were getting secluded in the bottom as well. But right now, summer's over, it's fall, our lakes are cooling off. They're actually losing energy. Our lakes are losing that thermal energy, that energy from the sun, and they're becoming rejuvenated actually, because they're losing energy. There's those layers that the lake developed during the summer are being broken down, and the autumn winds are now mixing the lake. They're mixing the lake water from the top to the bottom. And this, again, rejuvenates the lake. It helps mix in oxygen. So moving oxygen throughout the whole lake, mixing those nutrients that, you know, the animals and the plants need, mixing that through the lake as well. So by the end of fall, late fall, we're going to get a water body that's pretty much the same from top to bottom in terms of temperature and in terms of oxygen and in terms of nutrients. So again, rejuvenation. Lake mixing and turnover is natural, but we do find that it can be alarming. In this picture here on the left, on the right, sometimes we see in our lakes in autumn, when the lake starts to mix up, that layer of lake water towards the bottom of the lake that didn't have a lot of oxygen but had a lot of nutrients, you know, gets mixed in. Those nutrients, phosphorus, that nutrient that makes plants and algae grow, gets mixed into the lake, and all of a sudden algae and toxic algae can, you know, start blooming like crazy. So this unfortunately has happened in a couple of our lakes this fall. Here again on the right, that's a picture of a lake having a cyanobacteria bloom. So again, cyanobacteria, for those of you who aren't familiar, cyanobacteria is a type of bacteria. It acts like an algae. It blooms when there's a lot of nutrients, and some forms of cyanobacteria can be toxic to us, toxic to our pets. So I do see this throughout my career. I've seen lakes, you know, all of a sudden bloom in fall, and we're like, what's going on here? And oh, right, the lake just mixed up, and that whole big plug of nutrients came up to the top, and those algae are going crazy. So again, lake mixing and turnover is natural. Sometimes it's alarming here when it causes algae blooms. So by early November, you know, late fall, once the lake is fully mixed, it starts to set the stage for freezing to happen. Our lakes generally in New Hampshire freeze, and look at how beautiful that is. You know, this is one of my favorite winter pictures, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to give you a lakes in winter talk in a couple months. So it's just too early for this. So let's rewind and go back to autumn. So this is where we are now. In autumn, our lake levels, so the level of water in our lakes becomes lower. This generally happens naturally and is also enhanced on some lakes by drawdowns with lakes with dams. And a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure many of you are aware of this, mid-September, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services controls a number of dams, and they did publish the drawdown schedule for a number of our lakes. And if you missed that or want to check it out, I have the link down there at the bottom. It's on the DES website. Due to the drought, however, this year, some lakes that normally get drawn down this time of year are already at or are super close to their to levels that they're normally drawn down to. So some lakes are really not going to get drawn down much further. This is a pretty impressive picture of Moore Reservoir up in the Littleton, New Hampshire area, really low water here. So why draw down? I know that's a common question I've gotten throughout my career. You know, so why do we artificially, in some lakes that are controlled by dams, why do we artificially lower the water level? A couple reasons: to protect the shoreline from erosion, protect the shoreline from being washed away, especially during fall and spring rains and windstorms. We draw down to help reduce ice damage to shoreline structures around our lakes, our permanent docks and our boathouses. Lowering the water. When water freezes, it expands. So when the ice cover comes, it actually expands and can damage structures. We in New Hampshire draw down to help regulate water, the storage of water and the flow of our rivers. Common reason to draw down is to reduce flooding in the spring. Usually, we get rain, a lot of rain in the spring, and combined with snow melt. And so it's good to have our lakes in the spring at a little bit lower level to reduce flooding. Another common reason for drawdown is to allow for shoreline property owners to work on shoreline structures, to repair, docks, repair boathouses. Provided that work is permitted, even though the water is drawn down, property owners do need to get a permit from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to work on those structures normally. Drawdown is also occurs to help, in some cases, control the growth of plants. But that's sometimes effective, sometimes not so effective. But a whole bunch of reasons why drawdown is a fairly common practice in our lakes in New Hampshire. Let's see here. There we go. But potential disadvantages of drawdown. Drawdown does have to be done relatively slowly. If our lakes are drawn down too quickly or too much, it may not let some of those slower moving organisms move to deeper water. When I was first working at the Department of Environmental Services, one of the smaller ponds, which does get drawn down every year, was drawn down pretty significantly and pretty quickly. And unfortunately, it ended up stranding a bunch of, I believe it was mussels. And this is a picture of a mussel here in the bottom left here, the mussel that's being left behind by the water. But so in this pond, the pond was drawn down so quickly that the mussels really didn't have time to move. And then it became winter and the mussels essentially, froze. And then in the spring when the water came up, the dead mussels, floated up, and it was very alarming, very stinky, very disheartening. So, we have to make sure that drawdown is done carefully. So those more sessile organisms, the organisms that can't, move fast like fish can relocate. And we don't want to draw down too much because, what if we have a really dry spring? It may take a long time for those water levels to recover. So again, an important lake management tool in New Hampshire used in many of our lakes, but does require some planning and some careful scientific study. So what else is happening this time of year? Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of this and have participated in these activities. For some, this is a really sad time of year. Closing up the cottage, taking out the dock. I want to give a little shout out here on the right to the Beaver Lake Improvement Association down in Derry, a pretty cool lake association, and they're providing a service around their lake this fall. The association is getting together groups of volunteers to go around and help others take out their docks. If you've ever tried to take out a dock, especially one like this, it's not an easy task. So lots of hands make for light work. But again, it's a busy time of year for us, that need to button things up before winter. And usually in New Hampshire, our seasonal residents are they are going back home to their regular year-round house. May not be the case this year. We may have people staying up here longer, enjoying the beautiful lakes year-round with the pandemic. So we'll see. But guys, one of my favorite guys here. So what happens to all the animals that live in the lake? We talked about what's going on with us people, right? What are they doing? What are the animals doing to get ready for winter? So loons, right? A lot of our lakes have loons, and the adult loons are getting ready to, or if they haven't already, really getting ready to migrate to their wintering grounds. And their wintering grounds, generally speaking, are in the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast from Maine to Rhode Island. So if the adult loons haven't left yet, they're certainly getting ready for it. But we know that the loon chicks stay behind. They stay behind on their birth lake until just before the lake freezes. And they stay behind to allow their bodies, and particularly their feathers, to more fully develop so that they can actually make it the flight to the ocean. And then they'll go to the ocean and often hang out for a couple of years before returning, generally speaking, to their birth lake. Sometimes loons wait a little too long. So if a loon waits until there's significant ice cover on our lakes, then that loon may not be able to take off. If you've ever seen a loon try to take off from the water, it's not the most graceful thing. They do need a lot of open water. So unfortunately, almost every winter you hear about, the concern about loons getting stranded, and our partners at the Loon Preservation Committee certainly over the years have spent a number of rescue attempts to help get these loons off the lake. So if you are on your favorite lake this late fall and you see ice crushing in and you do see loons that are still there, please do give the Loon Preservation Committee a heads up on that. Most other waterfowl are flying south in search of warmer waters and food this time of year. For those of you who are familiar, this is the Canada goose. Beautiful bird, but some of us might not be too sad that they're leaving our lakes and going somewhere else. A beautiful bird that also can cause quite a havoc with the mess they make sometimes along our lakes. But in any event, they're a very beautiful bird. In early fall, also fish. Fish are, for the most part, are freely roaming around the lake. At this point in time, in early fall anyway, oxygen is abundant throughout the lake, and the fish are looking for plants and they're looking for bait fish. But as fall goes on and the water cools, the fish are going to be going deeper, generally speaking, to find water that's actually warmer, closer to the bottom of the lake. And we'll talk all about that a couple months in our Lakes in Winter presentation. But what about those other animals? And the reason I put this in is when my daughter was a couple years old, she's like, yeah, Mom, but what about all the otters and the beavers and the turtles and the frogs? What are they doing in winter? Where do they go? Great question. And I'm not going to answer that tonight because I am not the expert. So this is my shameless plug to get you to turn in next month, November 4th. I'm so excited. We're having 2 wildlife biologists from Fish and Game spend an hour with us to talk about these awesome critters. Let us know more about their ecology, their life cycle, and also what they're doing this time of year. So if you haven't registered already, registration is open, and I can't wait. But, so we've talked about, what some of the animals are doing, what some of the people are doing, what's happening in our lakes in general. And here's where I'm going to say, I hope some of you are wondering, what can you do right now to help your favorite lake, put your favorite lake to bed and hope that it wakes up healthy and rejuvenated in the spring. I'm going to turn this over to Krystal Costa, my colleague, and you can wonder no more. She's got a bunch of really great tips to share with you. So take it away, Krystal, and I will I'll try to do your slides and let me know if I'm, too fast or too slow.
Sounds good, Andrea. I'll just try to remember to say slide. So thank you for the introduction. I'm going to give some lake-friendly tips for everybody. So you might be wondering what our Lake Smart program is. I know that we have a handful of folks in the audience tonight that have participated in the Lake Smart program either this season or last year. So we're really happy to see that you're here, and everybody else, send them an email and ask them why you should join. Just kidding. What is Lake Smart? It is an education, evaluation, and recognition program for property owners, no matter where you live, whether that is right on the water or many miles from it, to help you learn to live in a more lake-friendly way. And this is a year-round approach. So spring, summer, fall, and winter, whenever your property and how you live on it, or if you leave for the winter, how you have it maintained in your absence, all affects the lakes that we cherish here in New Hampshire. But the most important thing about the Lake Smart program is that it's free, it's voluntary, and it's entirely regulatory. So let's get into some of those tips. Andrea, go ahead and give me the next slide. We can start as we have all of our leaves falling here in New Hampshire. We're here to talk about our lakes in autumn. So what can we do now? One thing is to assess what you're going to do with all of the leaves that are falling from the trees right now. And please don't rake or leaf blow those leaves into the lake or into the water. If you don't live directly on the lake, this is actually true for drainage ditches and storm culverts and things like that. You want to keep those leaves on site, on the ground, where they're going to decompose and go back into the soil versus washing off or washing into the lake. The excess nutrients in leaves that fall from our trees are good for our lawn and things like that when we mulch them in with the lawnmower. But when they get into the lake in excessive amounts, it brings in a lot of nutrients, and that can lead to algae growth and contributes to that muck layer that we all know starts to build up in the lake. So I always recommend, for the best fall leaf trick, is to take your lawnmower and retire your rake and simply run back and forth over your leaves a few times on your lawn and use them as some natural fertilizer for your lawn. Okay, slide. But with that, you want to make sure that you aren't piling leaves or grass clippings or mulch or any other kind of organic material right along the shoreline, or like I was saying earlier, otherwise in drainage areas that's going to be washed off with spring rain or maybe snow melt and get into the lake, because those things too will encourage algae growth and contribute to that muck. And I suspect that we might get this question because we get it all the time. What about the leaves that naturally fall into the lake from the trees? That is part of the natural process. And yes, they do contribute nutrients to the water, but that's all part of the cycle. We don't want to be having people take this giant pile of leaves that they rake up on their lawn and then put all that into the water. But what the trees contribute is okay. And if you have leaves that wash up onto your shoreline and you want to remove those from the system, you can certainly go down and grab them with your hands and throw them, further up on land and into the compost pile to get them out of the water. Next slide. A lot of our lakes are already in this kind of condition right now, as Andrea said, from the drought. But otherwise, on a normal year, in fall, lakes are being drawn down, and that means the water level is receding. So this is actually an okay time to go along the shoreline of your lake and, pick up any leaves or muck that has washed up that you can see. But what this gentleman is doing here, raking the actual lake bottom itself, is not a good thing. And it's actually against the law, and with good reason. Actually raking the lake bottom or disturbing the lake bottom in any sense kicks up sediment, and it resuspends nutrients into the water column. And the sediment is harmful for aquatic organisms in that it smothers out their habitat. It can cause some, scratching in fish skulls and other damaging effects like that. And then those nutrients obviously feed algae growth. And that's, I think, what everybody is the most worried about right now, is how can we get on top of algae blooms and things like that. So if you have ever raked your lake bottom, or have done it in the past, or your neighbor does it or something like that, let them know that this is something that's actually really harmful to the health of the lake, and maybe discourage them not to do it in the future. Slide. Okay, and hopefully more folks are like the Beaver Lake Association, and that you're willing to give a helping hand to your friends and neighbors to help everybody get their docks out for the winter time. And this is an ample opportunity for dock owners to look for aquatic invasive species. As you're out there in the water removing these structures, look for any unusual plants or maybe animals, especially little mollusks like snails and little shells and things like that. Anything out of the ordinary, whatever you notice is important, because oftentimes when an aquatic invasive species enters a water body, it's gonna build up in some of these areas, like near your dock or even on your dock. So if you see anything, please take a picture, and you can email that picture directly to the Exotic Species Coordinator at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. We've got Amy Smagula's email address down here at the bottom. She will respond to your email at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I swear. So send her a picture, let her know where you found it, what lake you're on, and so on and so forth. And she can let you know, hey, that's a native species like a bladderwort or a native mollusk, or that looks suspicious, maybe we should look at that. And that'll be really helpful for her in identifying future infestations. Slide. My favorite thing to talk about, your septic system. So I know I'm really strange, but we live in houses, and I think that we all have this magic ability to flush or pour things down the drain and it just goes away. And I think most people don't worry about what happens to it. So I'm going to give a shout out to your septic system, your honorable septic system, for the hard work that it does to filter out and break down the polluted water that we wash down the sink and our human waste and things like that. And now is really a perfect opportunity to take a look at that system and identify any potential maintenance before winter comes, because once winter comes, if your septic system has a maintenance problem or is in failure, it is much more difficult, i.e. much more expensive to fix. So I've got a couple pictures here, and I want to say that in a season like we've had with this extreme drought, it's totally normal for the grass growing over your leach field to look a little brown and dry. But if the majority of your lawn looks brown and dry, and then your leach field has this lush green growth over it, that can be a red flag. So if you are seeing something like this on your property right now, or even come springtime, you certainly want to make sure that you have your leach field itself inspected. So I recommend that everybody has their whole system, their tank and their leach field inspected regularly, and make sure that you are seeking out a professional with good certification, somebody that's going to take the time to walk you through the inspection that they're performing on their system, let you know what kind of system you have and how it functions, and any peculiarities about the specific type that you have. For example, me and my partner have a septic system that has a filter on it very close to the house. And although we don't need to have our system pumped, more than once every 2 years because it's well-sized, we do have to have that filter cleaned out annually. And if we didn't know that, because the person that we hired to perform our first inspection when we bought our house, we might have had a serious problem with our septic system. So make sure you're picking a good professional for that. And just a little extra care for your septic system this fall is to actually let the grass grow a little taller over it. You might think that you want to get one last mow in before the season's over, but having something like 6 inches of grass growing on top of it provides a little extra insulation against the winter, and that is a good thing. Slide. So another good thing to address this fall, and particularly now as we're finally starting to get a little bit of rain, is to walk around your property and look for any areas of bare soil, any erosion, whether it's bare soil because we had a drought and all of your grass and plants died, or if the soil was washed away due to an intense rainstorm like some of the ones that we've had in the past couple of weeks. Thinking about more permanent solutions to those areas is important, but if you've got a big patch of your lawn or your yard that died during the drought, think about temporarily stabilizing those problem areas. So once the spring melt and rains come, those areas don't get washed out even further, taking those nutrients directly into the lake. And for a lot of you DIYers out there, or if you have a landscaper that you like to work for, we've compiled a really great resource library on our website. So if you've got something on your property and you want to look into some options for taking care of those now, you should hop on over to our website and check that out, because we worked really hard on it and it's very cool. Slide. But getting into winter, now is the time to make sure that you have winter maintenance secured. Obviously, plow people and so on and so forth fill their books up early. So whether you live on your lake property for the winter or you go south and have it maintained by somebody, and really whether you live on the lake or not, miles from it, the amount of de-icing agents that we use on our landscape really affects our water bodies. That stuff is highly toxic to aquatic life, and it even gets into our drinking water. And the important thing to note about chloride salt is that once it's in a water body, we really can't remove it. There's no real process to break it down. So even though we have some really fancy stormwater systems that engineers are designing and things like that. Chloride is one that we can't filter out. So reducing the amount of de-icing agents that we use on our landscape is a priority. So we recommend that everybody make sure that their winter maintenance person is certified as Green Snow Pro. And what this does is it teaches them about the science behind salt application and the right times to apply that so that you get the most bang for your buck. Not only does this reduce the amount of de-icing agents that are even needed, but it's also a safety matter. So making sure that those agents are being put down on the surface when it's actually going to affect the ice and not just wash off and then ice over again. And then another good tip, and this is something that I'm really trying to brainstorm how I'm going to do at my new home, is how can we designate one entrance? What is going to be our winter access to our property? We have 2 doors on our house, and you know, we'd like to make sure that we are plowing out an area so that we can access our propane tank and our mudroom, but you know, I don't think we necessarily need to plow the entire driveway to access our porch on the back of the house or anything like that. So putting a little extra thought and effort into your snow storage and your access is also important, because if you can reduce the amount that you have to plow out, you can also reduce the amount of de-icing agents you have to use. Slide. For those of you that have docks or boat houses, you may use a bubbler to protect your property during the winter. One thing that you can do and set it up this fall is to get a thermostat and a timer for your bubblers. You don't need to open these giant swaths of lake ice in order to protect your dock or boat house. You just need to do just enough to disconnect the structure from the ice sheet. So not only is this a safety concern, having these giant patches of open ice, but it also disrupts the natural cycle of the lake and the wildlife that live in it. So if you use a thermostat and a timer, you'll be doing a good thing for the lake, doing a good thing for safety purposes, and you can also save money too by reducing the amount of energy that you're using. Slide. Oh, Andrea wants me to remind you to put in signage. So folks, make sure you install proper signage. It's not expensive. You can get it from your town clerk. Post it up on all sides so that people know that there is this area of open water. Slide. So for those of you that have already participated in our Lake Smart program and have started their journey, we're so glad that you're doing this with us, and we can't wait to help you take your property and your lifestyle to the next level in the name of lake-friendly living. And for those of you that are just learning about Lake Smart and curious about how you can engage with it or how Lake Smart you are, whether you live right on the water or you know, further away in the watershed, you can go and take our free online self-assessment. And this is sort of like step 1, dipping your toes into what it means to live in a lake-friendly way. And this survey is designed to give you a pretty good idea as you go of what you're doing really well and what you could improve upon. And then after that, you have the option to invite me and Jessica, maybe Andrea, out to visit with you on your property to walk around and sort of do a visual assessment. And we'll help you pick up on things that you might not notice, like areas of erosion or invasive species, or you know, things that you're doing really well or things that you could be doing better. So you can find that on our website as well. Slide. And then of course I mentioned our resource library. Like I said, it's really cool, and it's not just because I helped design it. It's because it's full of resources from the experts. There are some things in there from New Hampshire Lakes. There are lots of things in there from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, from our local partners, other lake and watershed associations that have done really hard work to put this information down in a way that is digestible and available to people that aren't just the scientists, and also a lot of the professionals that are out there. So, you know, there are resources out there for you. It might be hard to find them. There are professionals out there that can help you with things that you might have going on your property. And this is sort of our way of trying to bring all of that information together so that it's easier for you to find and access the things that you need. Slide. And Andrea, I'll hand it back to you because I know you're really excited about this.
Super excited. Krystal, that was awesome. Thank you. And we have a lot of time left for questions, which was by design. And I did want to clarify just a couple of things. So our Lake Smart program is voluntary and non-regulatory. So by participating in Lake Smart, you know, we can keep your information confidential. You're not going to get in trouble if something not quite right is happening on your property. So it's a really laid back, non-threatening, non-regulatory program. So I do hope that you'll at least take us up on it and go to our website and find out a little bit more about that. Our season is coming to an end for visits. Jessica and I are going out on a couple of visits tomorrow, and I'm doing 3 on Friday. But you can certainly take the survey and get on our list to have a visit next spring, soon after snow melts. And the other just clarification I wanted to make, and I kind of threw this at Krystal last minute, is there is a requirement if you are de-icing your dock to get a permit from your town clerk, and the permit is probably the cheapest permit you're ever going to find, 50 cents. But you do, with a new law, safety law, have to have signage in all directions. So, you know, 3 signs really. And I don't believe the town clerk provides those signs, but they certainly provide you some specs on the type of sign you need to put up there. So, yeah, so I'm going to turn it now over to Jessica. I know she's been manning the chat box, and we've seen a couple questions come in, but please do, you know, put your questions into the chat box. And also, if you have any tips, things that you do to help put your property or your home to bed for the winter, please type them into the chat box and share them with us. So take it away, Jessica.
Well, thank you, Andrea. We have a great question from Linda. She's got a cool situation. She has a freshwater bryozoan on her ladder to her dock, and she's wondering if she should do anything with it or just let it be. She doesn't take her dock out, but you know, just for safekeeping, if anything should be done or left alone.
Cool. For those of you who have never seen a bryozoan, I'm so excited for you, Linda. The first time I ever saw a bryozoan in a lake, I thought it was an alien brain. It's like this gelatinous, the one I saw was about I guess a little smaller than a basketball, maybe like a volleyball size, gelatinous greenish blob with these little smaller dots in it. So it's basically a colony of these small animals all together. Very cool, native, helps filter the water, is not an alien brain, but they do attach themselves to docks, sticks. So I would say, you know, Linda, if you can leave the bryozoan, if it's out of the water, it's probably not going to do very well. But if it's, you know, on the dock and in the water, you should probably just leave it. If you're worried that the water level is going to get lower and it's going to, you know, be exposed, you know, it wouldn't hurt you or the bryozoans if you wanted to sort of slowly peel it off and put it into the actual water. But very cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. That was kind of it. So if anyone has any questions or, like she said, tips, feel free. Now's the time. So.
Well, I want to add in earlier while I was talking about your leaves on your property. You know, it's always so funny to me that people see the leaves falling down and they're like, I gotta get those out of here. I gotta get them off. But your leaves do, you know, a couple of really good things for the natural landscape. Not only do they help build up organic matter in your natural areas and act like a natural mulch, which insulates the ground, protects soil microbes, provides habitat for things like salamanders and beneficial insects and stuff like that. But like I said, if you have them on your lawn or in your garden beds, that's free fertilizer, because those things are full of nutrients. And if you give them a quick chip with the lawnmower, they break down a lot more easily, versus forming a mat and potentially suffocating anything. And you can use them to mulch into your lawn, mulch into your garden beds and things like that. So instead of looking at your leaves as like a nuisance, try to consider them this free resource that you can do some really cool stuff with.
Great. I was just looking at the chat box here, and I think just to add on, John, you asked how much of a problem are leaves in lakes? You know, again, the natural leaves are not a problem, but in my career, and I've been in lake conservation now in New Hampshire, I guess for about 20 years, I have seen some pretty extreme examples of people getting rid of their leaves by raking them into the lake. And that becomes, you know, a huge localized problem, really contributing to the muck factor. I haven't been involved in any, you know, scientific study to see how much nutrients are released, you know, from leaves, but certainly our lakes, many of them are at a point where they really don't need any more nutrients. There are definitely people that probably just don't know that raking leaves into the lake is not good for the nutrient aspect and also just the muck factor. So I do think it is, you know, unfortunately, probably a regular, more common practice than we would like to think that it is. So, yeah. Also grass clippings. I am in the past, you know, 20 years surprised, you know, how many people I've come across over the years that just, you know, did not know that, you know, dumping your grass clippings to lake wasn't a good idea. So let's see. Another question I see from Anne, it's about septic servicing company doing the inspections. Does the regular septic servicing company do the inspections? You know, and it really depends. I think the best thing we could recommend is going, you know, finding a service provider that's, you know, Granite State designer, installer, certified professional, and some of them do both the servicing and the inspections. Some you do one or the other. But I think that the bottom line is get someone who knows the rules, who's certified. And on our website, on our Lake Smart Resource Library, we do have that button to find a professional, and there you can find the link to the list of service providers that are, you know, certified.
And I just want to add that link that Andrea is talking about for the Granite State designers and installers, they have essentially a search engine where you can input where you live in New Hampshire, and it will help you find certified professionals that can offer that service. So, you know, I don't want to say that you shouldn't just go with any old septic company, but I do. We think that it's really important that you seek out somebody that is very, very professional, and GSDI it is one that we know those people are very, very proud to take this seriously, and they care about a highly functioning septic system. After all, they are certified to design and install them, so they are the experts, and they'll tell you everything that you need to know and peculiarities about your particular system and how to best care for it. So I just hope that everybody gets on there and checks it out and looks up somebody in their area. And you might be surprised, you know, the person that you use for your system might be certified through that. But if they're not, you know, you should maybe think about changing. Any more questions, Jessica?
Yeah, we just got one from Craig. He's asking when the lake level is, you know, very, very low. Is that okay? Is that a good time to rake those leaves in the muck when the water's down?
Yeah, so that slide that we showed earlier, I was trying to sort of present the difference between what's an okay practice and what's not a great practice. When the lake is drawn down, it's certainly okay to rake up the stuff that is washed up on the edges of the water. So any leaves or stuff that's on land left behind now that the water is lower. That area where there's no water anymore is okay to gather materials up and take away. But once you actually get into the water itself, you don't want to be raking anything out of the water. I mean, if you see like a big clump of something gross and you want to give it a little scoop with your hands and throw it on shore, that's okay. But, you know, you should not be actually using a rake to pull anything out of the water. I hope that helped.
Yeah, Krystal, that's awesome, and just reinforcing the fact that, you know, one of the reasons we don't want the lake, the rake in the water is disturbing the bottom sediment, which makes it all cloudy, releases that phosphorus into the water. It can fuel, you know, an algae or a cyanobacteria bloom, and also the tines of your rake, you know, going into the bottom can disturb any benthic, any organisms living in the bottom there. So, but yeah, raking out of the water, you know, is okay.
Out of the water.
Raking outside of the water, not in the water.
There we go.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Cool.
Right.
Well, it's 7:51. We've got 9 minutes if people just want to rapid fire shoot in all the questions that you have the burning desire to ask us.
I would say at this point, if you have any lake-related questions, you're welcome to put them into the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them. But if you want to take off for the night and enjoy the rest of the evening, this presentation again is recorded. It's going to be posted on our website tomorrow, and you'll receive an email in just a few minutes asking you to tell us how we did and other things you guys want to learn about in the next several months. So I don't see anything coming in the chat box. So Krystal, any last things you want to share with the group this evening?
Well, I guess I would just say that, you know, as the temperature's cooling down, I get extremely jazzed up to do yard work and activities like that. So if you can do that or have somebody do that, fall is just the perfect time to, you know, give your landscape a little extra love to cushion it against the chill of winter and to stabilize it and protect it before the coming spring comes and, you know, potentially washes it away. And that's extra important this year when we've had such a significant drought. With our landscape being a lot drier, it is so much more susceptible to erosion, and the things that live in our soil and keep it healthy are also a little stressed. So giving your landscape a little extra love in the fall is a good thing to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Krystal. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you all of you for tuning in. Please, when you get the email, share this presentation with others who weren't able to tune in, and do tune in next month and hear from the wildlife biologist. I'm so excited. I hope you guys are too. So thanks again. It's wonderful to see all of you again. Have a great night and keep in touch. Bye.